Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Growing Up Comics. This issue, this time around issue, like you're reading this in your lap or whatever. This time around, I am dealing with a kind of like a interesting offshoot of the comic book industry. At least I think it was interesting when I was a kid. The role playing games for Marvel and DC Comics. Um, each were done by a different company and stuff and so on and so forth. Um, I grew up at a time like in the '80s when Dungeons and Dragons was very popular amongst the group of people, and I always was fascinated by it. I always liked the idea of like the immersive role playing experience and hang out with friends and you know frenemies and going up against each other and being a something that it wasn't in real life. I could be a barbarian, I could be a tough guy, I could be a person of great respect, or I could be a thief, or whatever. Um, but unfortunately, I never really got involved in it. I didn't really have anybody around me who actually played the game. Um, my friend group were more onto Axis and Allies than they were Dungeons and Dragons. So I played that a lot, but I never really played Dungeons and Dragons. I played Dungeons and Dragons once in a comic book store in Wyoming, Pennsylvania. I forget the name of it. I know the guy who owned it, but I'm not gonna, I think I know it, but I'm not going to go into details about it. That's not important. I played it once. It was fun. Um, but I don't think it was able to finish the first game even because I had to leave because my parents were picking me up. So I was always very interested in like the role playing games in general, kind of like but from afar because I wasn't able to actually partake of it because nobody did that. But the fact not having anybody to play with it didn't stop me from picking up the Marvel and DC role playing games when they came out. Um, there were superhero role playing games before this came out. Most famous one of this was the Champions game, which I think first appeared in 1981. Um, I think like the Hero system was also out around this time too beforehand. Um, I think there's one called Golden Heroes. There's also out. So there are role playing games featuring individual characters that um, weren't licensed by anybody. But if you were handy with the character creation stuff, you could create a version of whatever favorite character you might want through the character creation program, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But then in 1984, TSR, which was one of the biggest names in pardon me, in role playing games, I believe they were the Dungeons and Dragons publisher at the time, uh, decided to come out with the Marvel role playing game. And even though I didn't have anybody to play with, I bought it, and it was fantastic. Uh, it had it, it was my first experience of actually owning like a role playing game system. It was a like the mechanics and how it works and everything like that. I believe the set came with like cards of superheroes, and in the front was like a the way they appeared on like in their Marvel handbook to the official handbook of the Marvel Universe entry, a full length standing figure of them, and in the back it had their stats, and I think they used a system called Face Rip, which means you got stats for fighting, agility, strength, endurance, reason, intuition, and psyche. Um, some are self-explanatory. Fighting means how well you fight, agility how agile you are, strength how strong you are. Um, the endurance is how much punishment you can take, how long you can go without getting tired. Reason how smart you are. Intuition, uh, I believe it's intuition. Don't quote me on it. Um, like how you are able to decide, like somebody's the villain's hiding in the crowd to be able to find that. Psyche, how resistant you are to like say psychic attacks and stuff like that, and how strong you are of mind. Um, and they all had different numbers, like the uh, um, first four added up to your health score, um, and I think the other came up with your karma, and you could play those during the game. It also came with like little tiny like cardboard like triangles that you could put together. Um, of the little characters and a map you could move them around. Um, and like I said, I tried to play. It's kind of hard to play a role playing game all by yourself, but I tried to put together a couple of adventures by myself, like just going through that. But mostly it's just a case of like seeing like, okay, have a tangible way of seeing okay how Thor would hold up against like say Hulk and like you know all kinds of stuff like that. Another thing was I remember about the game. It had a very robust character creation thing, and I believe it was like tied into the die, the 20 D20s that they came with the game, and you could make new heroes and make random attributes by doing the thing, and like it'll give you the category and give you the power that you could choose from, and you could have like I remember I created a character called Power Station, TM. Bill Gavaskus, me now, um, who was a giant who increased in size through his actual like suit of armor, but also could give out electroshocks and stuff like that. So um, you have like wacky stuff like that, stuff that didn't really go together that you could actually try to make an interesting character out of. So I still have characters like that, and like hopefully at some point I'd get a chance to do that. You know, maybe put them in some kind of work of fiction at some point. Um, but I digress. Um, but like they're fun. They also sold separate. I didn't get them separate miniatures. They were like little pewter figures that you could actually paint if you want to. Um, didn't get that because like getting the role playing game that I hardly ever played. Um, but I got a lot of use out of it with the character creation. Was bad enough. Um, but but like but I digress. A couple months later, DC partnered with Mayfair Games to put their own version of um, the their their comic book uh, role playing game called the DC Heroes role playing game, um, and I got that one too. Uh, it as I recall, it was a thicker box. They gave you a lot more stuff, and I think the main reason was because the game was much more complex. It was more complex than the actual Marvel one. Um, I remember like it had a similar kind of system to the Face Rip, but it wasn't exactly the same. I think instead of 7, it gave you 9 attributes that you had to deal with, and back and forth, and powers and all kinds of stuff like this worked differently and stuff like that. So you needed like you had a lot more bells and whistles to do if you wanted to play it. Like I didn't really play it that often, but it was just cool to actually again like just to say compare contrast like um, put in it put a tangible thing out like the big thing about comic books at the time. Even in the handbooks, they wouldn't actually go and give you an exact number of like what their powers were. They want to leave it up a little bit of wiggle room for freedom for like the future creators if they want to like say maybe have Captain Marvel go into Nova or travel through time or whatever. They don't want to like limit that person if they want to do that, so they try to keep it as vague as possible. The role playing games didn't have that luxury, so they basically had like a whole bunch of like actual quantifiable data attached to their powers, and I love that because like be able to see like who was the most powerful and who wasn't, and which hero getting knocked out the game immediately, and who would be the last one standing. That was fun to do. So I got both those. I still have. I don't have the original boxes because they kind of like fell apart and moved to move. But I have them in like file folders and stuff like that. But also I have the follow-ups. They both came out with follow-ups. I only got one of the follow-ups of each of them. Um, the expanded system for the Marvel one was a whole lot more characters, uh, more cards, more stuff like this, more information and stuff like that, which I thought was cool. And one good thing about like the TSR ones, TSR was publishing a book at the time, a magazine called Dragon Magazine, and 90% of the whole thing was uh, about you know like the role playing games that they had, like the Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. But they'd have like a couple pages every issue addressed to the Marvel files, and I used to think that was cool. I used to like go into like it didn't make sense to buy the entire magazine for just 3 pages of Alpha Flight in the back, or you know, the I think I might have bought one at one point because I remember getting like the Liberty Legion. I think was an insert in one of those, and I got that because I like the Golden Age characters. Um, but it's like you can really get them on a regular basis because you're buying a $2 or $3 book or whatever magazine just for a couple pages. I didn't really seem right. Um, and like I said, didn't know many people around who did Dungeons and Dragons to follow on that, so I didn't really have a chance to actually, uh, like pick them out of the crowd afterwards. But that was there. That's the way that they to expand the line into characters that didn't really have uh, weren't big enough. They were not ready for prime time characters. Um, so it's kind of like that was a fun option there. Um, uh, but the expanded was expanded the character, expanded the roster, expanded the number of heroes you could play with, added rules, created like stuff that might came out the first time like didn't realize they needed, and stuff like that. And then after that, I kind of like fell out of the whole role playing thing. Then that they came out with a couple of ones. One thing I did get was the TSR did a version of um, the official handbook to the Marvel Universe, but only in role playing thing, and that gave you it was a I think 5 or 6 actual loose leaf binder uh, pages um, that gave you like you went in alphabetical order and gave you stats for every Marvel character, from Abomination to the Zax, which was obviously you know really cool. So I had to get that. So I still have that, and I still own that. I figure that's good to actually. My idea of justifying that is like if I ever read for Marvel Comics, and this is of course me being a teenager thing. But see how that worked out. Um, this would be great for me to actually you know figure out how to work out and which characters would go well with each other and their personalities and stuff like that. Um, and I believe like uh, the Mayfair came out with a version of Who's Who with a similar concept of like expanding the line uh, to the characters who might not have been in the actual box sets, and yeah, so you're able to get every single character that you wanted all in one fell swoop. Um, both companies have gone on since then to have different kind of like role playing games and different kind of games and stuff like that. Um, Marvel is currently have a multiverse game, I believe it's called. They're starting. It has a whole role playing game that they're coming out with, uh, like I think they have like one for the X Men. They have one coming out for Spider Man. I think one's in the line for the Avengers. Um, basically, guidebooks. They also had the same. TSR had the same thing, which is also good because big Avengers fan. I could get like the Avengers guidebook, and it's a relatively thick paperback. It wasn't like humongous, but it was big enough. And get every character who appeared in the Avengers and all their stats, and that was interesting to read and find out about. But to start that back up there, I don't know if DC has DC had a role playing game a couple years ago, um, but it's kind of like picking both those up, and I did. It's kind of weird to see them now because the hobby, the games have gone so far and changed so much that it you could see the similarities and resemblance, but it's still kind of weird to see. Um, but those are still around and about. But I still have like a soft spot in my heart for the original series, and also like I believe they're all off print now, and you could buy them on eBay for a whole bunch of stuff. But um, a lot of them are on now. If you look on the internet, uh, you could find if dubious means, you know, use this as you will. I don't know if it's like I said during my talking about piracy for the Girlfriend's Guide to Comic Books. Um, the dubious morality of like downloading stuff that's no longer in print, but it's still kind of technically under trademark and copyright um, that you have to do with. But if you do enough searching, you can find at least all the Marvel ones and all the modules and everything like that, all in PDF form on one website. I'm not going to link it down here in case it is like kind of like stuff like this. But if you want to put your Deerstalker hat on and do an investigation of the Googles, um, you should be able to find it pretty easily. And then I don't know if they have DC there too. They might have DC too. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, you could be able to find that there. And there's a lot of like websites that just give you like carry on the whole um, like adapting newer heroes that came out after both these um, games went out of print into their systems. So if you go on the online, you can find those people who just did that. Like they have like say stats for Guy Gardner or Lobo or Lord knows who's or Miss Marvel or from Marvel or you know people like that. So, but that's it. Did you uh, partake of the Marvel or DC role playing games? Did you actually get a chance to play them with real life human beings? I would love to see how that was and figure out how that was, and must have been fun. Yeah, I'm envious of you already. Put it in the comments. Let's talk about this. Um, are there any other like, did you play any of the outside ones, like the Champions or Heroes World or Villains and Vigilantes? What did you think of those? Are they worth like kind of investigating through the eBays to try to pick up, um, uh, or in like game stores that are really good? Complete Strategist, I think, has a lot of those in New York City, um, which is fun. Uh, yeah, let me know in the comments. If you found this informative, if you liked it, put the thumbs up button. It helps me decide what content to put on this channel. If you like this kind of travel down memory lane, hit the subscribe button because I have a lot of topics left to cover, and hopefully you find them informative. Also, if you have any suggestions for the site, anything like happened over the last, say, 50 years of comic books, give or take, um, and you like to find out what it was like, or if my opinions on it, I might already have it planned, and I could maybe bump it up a little bit. But you could also, like make a suggestion. I'll try maybe do a video on it if you so choose. Um, but if you did make it this far, thank you for hanging out. I appreciate that, and I will talk to you later. But until then, keep on collecting.